Are we born afraid of the dark? Turn off the lights tonight. Not in a dramatic way, just the normal way. Press the switch. The room does not change. Your bed is still there. Your desk is still there. The chair in the corner is still just a chair. But something happens anyway. The moment the light disappears, your brain starts behaving as if the room has become less trustworthy. The air feels a little bigger. The corners feel a little deeper. Every tiny sound gets promoted to evidence. A pipe in the wall becomes footsteps. A jacket on a chair becomes a person standing very still. Your own house, a place you have successfully survived thousands of times, suddenly asks you to prove it is still safe. And this is strange, because you know better. You know there is probably nothing there. You know the laundry has not developed ambitions. You know the chair is not waiting for you to fall asleep, so it can begin whatever chair-related plan it has been working on. But knowing that does not always help. So here is the question. Are human beings born afraid of the dark? Or do we learn it? The answer is more interesting than either one. Because babies are not born with a tiny horror movie playing in their heads. A newborn does not look into a dark room and imagine something with long fingers crawling across the ceiling. A newborn barely understands the room. At birth, human vision is blurry. Babies can see light and movement. But the world is not sharp yet. Faces matter more than furniture. Contrast matters more than detail. A newborn's universe is not made of monsters and shadows. It is made of warmth, smell, sound, milk, skin, heartbeat, and whether the person keeping them alive is still nearby. So a baby is not afraid of darkness the way a 6-year-old is afraid of darkness. A baby is afraid of sudden change. A baby is afraid when the signal drops. When the lights go out, the world does not just become dark, it becomes less readable. And for a creature that cannot walk, cannot feed itself, cannot defend itself, and cannot even roll away from danger for a while, unreadable is a serious problem. This is where the first layer of fear begins. Not with ghosts, with biology. Babies have a startle reflex. If they hear a loud noise, feel like they are falling, or experience a sudden shift, their tiny arms fling outward as if their body is trying to grab the world before it disappears. It is called the Moro reflex, and it is one of the oldest things your body ever did. Before you had language, before you had memories, before you had a favorite color or an embarrassing childhood haircut, your nervous system already knew one thing. Sudden change matters. Then, after a few months, something else happens. A baby begins to understand that people and objects continue to exist even when they cannot be seen. This sounds obvious to you now. If someone walks behind a door, you do not assume they have been erased from reality. But that understanding had to be built. A very young baby lives in a world where disappearance is confusing. Then, slowly, the brain learns that hidden things are still there. And that is when darkness becomes more complicated. Because once the brain understands that something can exist even when you cannot see it, the dark stops being empty. It becomes a place where things could be. This is the second layer. The first fear is, I cannot read the world. The second fear is, something might still be there. And then childhood adds the final ingredient. Imagination. A toddler does not just see less in the dark. A toddler can invent more. This is when the closet becomes suspicious. This is when the space under the bed becomes a legal grey area. This is when a pile of clothes on the floor begins its unpaid acting career as a creature with shoulders. The dark gives the brain unfinished information, and the brain hates unfinished information. So it completes the picture, usually badly. Your brain is not a camera. It does not passively record the world. It predicts the world. It guesses what is out there based on fragments, patterns, memory, and threat. In daylight, there is enough information to correct the guess. That is a hoodie. That is a chair. That is a box. That is your cat looking at nothing, which is somehow worse, but still technically normal. In darkness, the correction gets weaker. The brain fills in the blanks. And because survival has never rewarded the animal that says, "It is probably nothing," every unknown shape gets treated with suspicion. This is not stupidity. This is caution with bad lighting. For most of human history, darkness was not a vibe. It was not an aesthetic. It was not something you added to a restaurant so people would pay more for pasta. Darkness was a condition of life. When the sun went down, humans lost their strongest sense. We are visual animals. Our eyes face forward. Our brains devote enormous resources to sight. We understand the world largely by looking at it. But at night, for hundreds of thousands of years, that advantage dropped away. And we were not alone out there. Large cats hunted in low light. Hyenas moved at night. Snakes were harder to see. Strangers were harder to identify. A branch breaking in the distance meant something, but you did not always know what. The darkness did not have to contain a monster every night. It only had to contain one once. That is the math evolution cares about. If your ancestor heard a sound in the dark and assumed it was nothing, and it was something, that story might have ended there. If your ancestor heard a sound in the dark and assumed it was something, and it was nothing, they spent a few minutes looking foolish beside a fire. Evolution is perfectly comfortable making you anxious if anxiety keeps you alive. That is why fear of the dark is not really fear of darkness. It is fear of lost information. It is fear of being unable to confirm safety. The dark takes away evidence. And the brain does not like living without evidence. This is also why children often want a nightlight. A nightlight does not make the room safer in any meaningful physical sense. It does not create a force field. It does not file a restraining order against whatever is allegedly in the closet. It just gives the brain enough information to stop inventing things. A small glow turns the monster back into laundry. This is one of the most human things in the world. We do not need the entire truth to feel safe. Sometimes we just need enough light to check the corner. And then we grow up. Or at least we get taller. Adults like to believe they are no longer afraid of the dark. We say things like, "I'm not a child." Then the power goes out at 2 a.m. The house makes one weird sound, and suddenly we are very interested in owning a sword. The fear changes shape. A child fears the creature under the bed. An adult fears the phone battery dying, the strange noise downstairs, the empty parking garage, the hallway light that should not be on, the feeling of walking through your own home and realizing every window is a black mirror. We do not stop fearing darkness. We modernize it. We surround ourselves with light so completely that real darkness almost feels unnatural now. Streetlights, screens, lamps, motion sensors, refrigerator glow, the tiny blue dot of a charger across the room that somehow has the spiritual authority of a lighthouse. We sleep beside rectangles of light. We check the time. We play rain sounds. We leave the bathroom door slightly open. Not because we are weak, because the ancient part of the brain still prefers a little proof. And this is where the question becomes uncomfortable. If humans are not simply born afraid of the dark, and if we do not simply learn it from scary stories, then fear of the dark might be something deeper. It might be the feeling of a brain meeting the limits of what it can know. In daylight, the world pretends to be complete. You can point to things, name them, measure them, walk around them, explain them. But darkness reminds you that your confidence depends on access. Remove the light, and the world does not disappear. Your certainty does. That is the strange part. The room is still the room. The hallway is still the hallway. The world is still there. But without perception, it becomes almost philosophical. What is behind you when you cannot see it? What exists in the corner before the light reaches it? How much of reality are you trusting simply because your senses usually work? Most of the time, you do not notice how fragile this is. You walk through life inside a small bubble of perception, assuming the rest of the world continues politely outside it. And it probably does. Probably is the word that keeps the whole thing running. Darkness makes you feel that word. This is why the fear can be funny and profound at the same time. Yes, part of you knows the coat hanging on the door is not a silent intruder. But another part of you, older than language, older than houses, older than doors, is whispering. Check anyway. That voice is not trying to ruin your evening. That voice got your ancestors through the night. Every person alive today comes from an unbroken line of people who were cautious enough, alert enough, and sometimes scared enough to survive until morning. You are not descended from the bravest people. You are descended from the people who listened when the dark sounded wrong. So no, we are not born afraid of the dark in the way stories make it seem. We are not born with a fear of monsters. We are born with systems designed to notice uncertainty. We are born needing closeness. We are born startled by sudden change. We are born helpless in a world we cannot yet understand. Then, our eyes develop. Our memory develops. Our imagination develops. And one day, the dark becomes not just absence, it becomes possibility. That is what we fear. Not the dark itself. The maybe inside it. And maybe that is why we never fully outgrow it. Because life is full of darkness that has nothing to do with night. The future is dark. Other people's minds are dark. Death is dark. The universe beyond what we can observe is dark. Even your own brain keeps most of itself hidden from you. You spend your whole life walking through rooms with partial light, guessing, naming shapes, trusting memory, trying not to imagine too much. And maybe growing up does not mean becoming unafraid. Maybe it means learning which shadows deserve your attention and which ones are just clothes on a chair. So tonight, when you turn off the light, remember this. The room has not changed. The chair is still a chair. The wall is still a wall. The dark is not reaching for you. But your brain is doing what it was built to do. It is protecting a small, fragile animal in a world that once had teeth. And somewhere underneath all your logic, or your adulthood, or your electric light, that animal is still awake. Darkness does not create monsters. It just takes away your ability to prove they are not there.